It's been months since I left the role, but I'm basically doing free advertising for your outreach. So here we go. As you all know, I left AT&T just a few months in. I just didn't really resonate, one, with the products and the services that we were selling, and I needed additional help that didn't necessarily feel like it was there. So I was at a point where I was like, look, I still know sales is for me, but ultimately I needed, one, a product that I can be super comfortable selling, and then two, excellent training, because I'm someone that had no experience selling. I've never had done retail sales, in person, remote, whatever. Tons of customer service experience, like fundraising, stuff like that. Cold calling was not the problem. It was really just like learning how to find the right people to call and have the right conversations with them. So when I left AT&T, obviously, you grow up in an Asian household. Fellow Asians can definitely resonate with this. You don't want to go even just a few weeks without a job, like post-college. So I was like on top of those interviews the moment I knew I was going to quit AT&T, like way before I left. And I was just very picky about where I went, because this time I was actually putting in the work. So if you guys watched my AT&T video, you guys know that I took the job specifically because I just didn't want to job search during my senior year, even though I already kind of saw some red flags through the internship program. But I was super picky now to figure out where do I want to be permanently. And though I did end up leaving Outreach, this time it was by no means anything to do with the company, nothing to do with the environment, nothing to do with the training. This was an excellent program. I just, by chance, I interviewed with them. I remember their interview process was the hardest I have ever done. I'm sure there's harder out there, but out of the sales interviews that I've done, this one was fun. It was a panel interview, but it was like back to back. So I was with two guys at first for like 30 minutes, two other people for 30 minutes, and then a final guy for 30 minutes. It was an hour and a half of interviewing back to back, no breaks. I didn't realize how prestigious Outreach actually was within the startup community and just the sales community until I joined. And when I was interviewing, it was just another interview. But I'm so fortunate to have been given the opportunity to work there. So I've been there since November of 2020 all the way till July of 2021. Quick overview. This is how I want to break this video down. Overview on kind of the role and everything like that in the company. Positives and then negatives. So with any of these company reviews, whether I had a great experience, negative experience, no matter what, I want to try to come across it as objectively as possible. Obviously, some of that is impossible, but we're going to try to make sure I break this down properly. So those of you who are considering it or already at the company or in the interview process, you guys can make a well-informed decision. Same thing with the AT&T video, just like I said there. If I don't cover something or you have more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Literally any of the links below. A lot of people preferably use LinkedIn, and that's totally fine. But totally happy to have a little bit longer of a discussion or even just answer some quick questions in the comments or something like that. Outreach is a unicorn startup. Their valuation is way higher now because they've gotten, I think, 2 rounds of funding since I've been there. They are doing a lot within the sales community to really just like push it forward. Those of you that aren't familiar with Outreach, they create essentially software. This software is called Outreach. That's what you're selling when you work at Outreach. So it's kind of meta. It's awesome. I used Outreach when I was at AT&T. A lot of big companies use it. It's not a CRM. It's a sales engagement platform. I feel like I'm on a call right now. Back when I worked with them, there's a major difference here. So you have your Marketo. You have your leads coming in, leads generation. You have your CRM. So like Salesforce, HubSpot, things like that. Right. This is where you store the data, and a lot of people also work out of there daily. So you're using Salesforce daily, you're working out of it, making calls, all this stuff. That is not how you want to work. And they're logging all the follow-up activity in Excel, or they're creating literally manual reminders on your calendar. Can you imagine a sales job where you have to do that, where you have to remember to follow up with every single person, just like individually? That's the worst thing ever. So what Outreach creates, and there's a couple other competitors in the space, and I personally, a little biased, I think Outreach is the best. We created a sales engagement platform, which is that third piece of that 3-piece puzzle. It creates a system of action for all that data that's in Salesforce. So it takes that data, you now have a way to actually, something that you can use day in and day out. You're living in it, you're making calls out of it, sending texts, emails, all this stuff. using sequences, something called a sequence. It reminds you who to follow up with, when to follow up with, how, right? Which method of follow up, and things like that. So very, very excellent product. I myself as a seller, I needed it to do well. The way that we utilize ToolStack and Outreach is incredible, but I'm getting ahead of myself. In terms of the role, I was an SDR, your sales development representative. Very different from like a full cycle seller, something you'd be at AT&T where you're doing all parts of the process. As an SDR, all you do, and don't discount it, this is still very difficult. You're cold calling people and essentially generating meetings for the AE, so the account executive who's going to run the meeting, and then you have your closers. So you have your SDR, AE, closers. There's new markets. There's different parts of the sales puzzle. There's different roles. This video is all about the SDR role and kind of my experience with it. And it's just it was fully remote. And I went to the office a tiny bit when I moved out to Seattle, but overall the pandemic was still going on, so it was an optional thing. Everything I say is going to be as a result of my experience being remote, so there might be some things I don't touch on just because I may not know about it or have had too much exposure to it. So let's start with the positives. I have such a long list of positives, and then I have a couple negatives, but overall, I just want to start with, say this right off the bat. It's a fantastic company. If you get an offer, definitely work at this company. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is why. They have amazing training. So if you're someone like myself, no sales experience, comfortable on the phone, right? And honestly, that might have been a good thing. But I had tons of fundraising experience, tons of cold calling experience. Did not know how to prospect for the life of me, how to find the right people to call, how to have the right conversations. We had this thing called the Agoji boot camp, like the Agoji Spartans, really, really tough boot camp. Throw a lot at you. It's like drinking through a fire hose, but ultimately we're thrown into calling right away. You're getting your talk tracks ready. You're doing the research, finding the right people to call. You are taught how to find the right people to call, how to sequence, and not only like sequence. I know a lot of companies use Outreach and they're like, oh yeah, sequencing, that's just a button. No, it goes beyond that. Targeted research to the right people to call. So you're not calling some Joe down the street to sell services and products to them. You are finding their boss. You're finding the boss of the boss. You're talking to the VPs, the C-suite. You're talking to the managers sometimes, right? Above the line selling and sometimes below the line. But knowing your audience, very important. And then finding the right people to talk to and having high-level conversations with those people rather than digging further pain and making sure Outreach can actually address that versus, again, just calling some random person and hoping that it works. So great trainers, great material, so much energy. And just to give you an example of how amazing the training was, I failed so bad at AT&T. I was screwing up. It was hard. I had no idea what I was doing. First month of Outreach, 267% of quota. Granted, quota was a little low, but either way, just excelled, moved up to the enterprise level accounts within just 3 months. This is like me and 2 other people. This program was really, really, really helpful for some of us that were struggling to really just like find our footing anywhere else. And it was just a fantastic training program. Like I said, a data-driven approach to sales. You have your KPIs, you have ways to track like metrics, track different things, even sentiment, right? Like how you're doing on the phone, what you're saying, how you're making customers feel. You are not in a place where you're constantly like, oh man, I wonder what I'm doing wrong or how I can improve. Your manager has actual actionable information for you that you can take and make changes on, which is super helpful as someone that's starting out where you don't have the expertise but you want to learn. So it was amazing. You had your open door policy. So Outreach has an open door policy, so you can really reach out to almost anybody and ask them to kind of show you something or introduce yourself or just like learn about something, learn about a different thing with either within Outreach or also just learn more from other sellers that are doing very, very well. So I remember we were actually required to reach out to, I think it was either 3 people every single week. It could have been more, I forget. Now you're forced to really just like make sure you're learning from the best of the best and doing exactly what they do, which is the key to success, honestly, is just making sure you're emulating the right habits and doing it well rather than just trying to figure out some random thing from scratch. And that's not going to work. So it is a little micromanaging, I will say that. It's definitely a little bit on the upper end of micromanagement in a sales role, which is AT&T was on the other end. However, I think ultimately people like myself really, really needed that because that helped so much to create the right habits, to have the right conversations, to find the right people. Half your day is calling. Half the day is literally sequencing, doing the research on the right prospects to call. versus spending 8 hours calling random people and then just doing some prospecting, at lunch or something like that. Like prospecting was very targeted at outreach. Commission, beautiful. You're paid on something called a SAL, which is essentially just if a meeting turns into a qualified lead. So you reach out, you do your cold call, you schedule a meeting, they show up, right, with the AE, they do their 30-minute or 1 hour demo. Or even if it isn't a demo, it's usually just like a high-level conversation. And if something clicks and they continue on, that results in what's called a SAL, sales accepted lead, sales acquired lead, sales qualified lead. That's SQL, that's not SAL, but either way, it's called a SAL, and that's how you get paid out. You get paid out per SAL, and I'll tell you the commission's beautiful. Uncapped. When you're at the enterprise level, it was so much money per SAL. You can virtually make, I remember sitting down, my manager sent me the spreadsheet. It was literally like, you can theoretically go up to like 120 grand together with your salary, commission, everything per year. Like, and again, uncapped, but like it's been shown, it's been proven by other people that have done it. So it's not just like a theoretical thing. The incentive of doing well was so high, and that can actually lead to a negative, but we'll get to that later. But excellent pay, excellent benefits. Salary is a little bit lower, it's 45 grand, but the commission easily makes up for that. It's attainable too, because you know what you're doing. It's not just some magic number that hopefully you're going to get. So you also had passion and commitment to what we sell. Obviously, you're using outreach to sell outreach. You really can't beat that. Lots of face time with leaders because it's a startup. When I started, it was only like 700 employees. We were dual headquarters, and now they actually have I believe a couple more that they've started up. So you have different places to work in. I worked out of the Seattle location, eventually went to the Seattle office for a little bit. But because of just like how small we are, and especially when you move up to the enterprise and the corporate level, and I'll get to that in a second, you have so much face time with the leaders because they know you. We were literally doing role plays with our VP of sales, and ultimately like that was just incredible because you're calling VPs and C-suite level leaders. So what better way to practice than doing it within outreach, within your own company, right? So we were able to do that. We got some tough feedback, but that just made us better callers. Again, it just felt like much more of a, and they called it the Agoji program for a reason. It's like training Spartans, right, for war. Like you weren't sugar-coated through everything. They know it's a cutthroat sales position, and they make sure to prep you by making you uncomfortable day to day. And that's exactly what a good training program should do, is teaching you what's required to do the role properly. Very fast movement because it's a fast-growing startup. Very big shout out to Austin Radke, Heather Burke. Y'all brought me up to the enterprise sector so fast, and I love being on their team and just being. There's different segments within the company, and again, this may change over a while. But when you start out, you're merging. Enterprise and corporate were the much larger companies. We moved up so fast because it's small. You get so much face time with managers, leaders, people in other segments. You're encouraged to reach out and make those connections. People know who you are. They know you want to move up. They see your skills and your they see your work ethic every single day, and also the results of your quotas and stuff, right? So they're always talking internally to try to get you promoted up before they start bringing outside talent in. So it's just incredible. When I did go to the office, I will say, fantastic. I literally only spent a few weeks in it, although again, it's just beautiful workspace. I didn't explore all of it, and frankly, it was largely empty. Just because of the pandemic and things like that. It was an optional thing. I heard the stories of just like nitro cold brew on tap, some beer on tap. It had a really good view right next to the water out here in downtown Seattle, and you had standing desks. You had everything you need to succeed and do your job appropriately, and just be around other people, right? You're not in a closed off cubicle, you're around everybody. There's also rooms for one-on-ones and meetings. There's just so much stuff. Overall, just wonderful people. They care about you. They care about your success. And you'll find this in just a lot of sales cultures in general because, these are very well extroverted people that care about other human beings. Something you may not find at like a small wealth management firm or something a little bit more not client-facing, right? So these are people that care about you. They care about your career progression, and you're working with good talent that knows what they're doing, varied backgrounds. Outreach specifically has great commitment to diversity. I think they said they wanted to diversify by like 67%, I think, by the end of either 2021 or 2022, the entire sales workforce. And they were doing it. In my incoming class, most unique group of sales individuals you would think of. We weren't just all a bunch of frat boys. We were actually all different backgrounds, etc. And different ages too, which was incredible for me because I got to learn from people that were much older than me. And some were about my age, but quite a few were older than me, had different experiences, and just both in life and then in business, right? Like, it was just so interesting to learn from everybody. You really feel the closeness with your team, even if you're remote, just because everybody's in the grind together. You're talking to each other on Slack. It's awesome. So speaking of Slack, the way we use the tool stack is just incredible. When I was at AT&T, I had no idea how to use Salesforce and Outreach. At Outreach, obviously, you become an expert at using Outreach, but I also became an expert at Salesforce. I understood how to do everything and how to find what I needed, and just like, you just understand everything, like the why behind everything. You're not just, oh yeah, you gotta click this, things like that, super fast. So ultimately, they understand how to actually train you. They're not just showing you what to click and hoping that you remember things. You're learning and understanding the purpose behind everything, and the way all the different tools are integrated. You know exactly what you need. You know where to go if you need help. Everything's in one. Like, we have like we have a Confluence network. Like, literally everything's on there. Like, everything's so well organized. And same thing with the people, is like with the open door policy, and like, you can hit anybody up on Slack. You know exactly who to go to if you need help with something, and it's highly encouraged. So those were all the positives. There's so many. There's so many more I don't have time to read, but ultimately those are the big ones. And there's just a few small negatives I did want to touch on. Just any company, no company's perfect, right? If there were a perfect company, everybody would work there. This isn't so much just Outreach in general, but sales, it's extremely taxing. Look, like, that's why I left, and I made the decision to get out of sales, and I'll make a whole separate video on that. But so in a nutshell, I felt like I didn't really have a life outside of work, which I had to give up a lot of things. And November of 2020 to July of 2021 really just flew by. It was like I moved out to Seattle. Things happened in the background, but ultimately, like, it was just so fast. Like, everything just felt like it was happening so fast because it was just like work, a couple hours to yourself, right? Maybe go to the gym, do something. And it's because you always have in the back of your mind, like, it's like if you sequence one more prospect, that's maybe one more sale, right? Like, there's just, the money is a huge motivator because it's just so well. You have such great commission structure and really good incentives. You really feel the pressure because we're a startup. You have all the leaderships. Everyone's eyes are on you because everybody knows each other. Like our group of 10 to 15 people on the team, that was the enterprise team. We were the ones doing all the business in these top level accounts, right? So it's like all the eyes are on you. It's like the whole idea of like, what have you done for me lately? And if you're not performing, or if you're having a tough month, it doesn't matter. It's like if you don't get the business, who else will? Because the company's smaller, and they really need you to perform. So and you really feel that, because you're a part of it, you really care and you want to perform, and that's what leads to long hours and, unfortunately, an unhealthy work-life balance. So the other thing is just like, I loved my management team at the enterprise level. They really did care. Ultimately, though, I do feel that, especially near the end, I was struggling a little bit because I was trying to balance some stuff outside of work, and it was all hitting me so fast. All the blame eventually comes down on you as the employee, which is fair. You're the one doing everything. It's your book of business. When it comes to a slow month, all the blame was on me, and my manager, he really just didn't know how to help me. There's only so much advice he can give me, and some of that I was putting into action, some of that I wasn't. Ultimately, like, I think my biggest issue is I was just like, all the stress and just like the workload and everything was just really getting to me, and I was so tired, like, every single day, right? Like, which ultimately just led to worse performance. It was like some things I couldn't even implement because part of me didn't want to. Like, I was just so checked out, is the best way to put it. And there was only so much that they can do as a management team, right? So all the blame does fall on you if something happens, and it's really, really tough to come back from that. Again, it's just what have you done for me lately? There is unfortunately also one thing that I think is worth noting. I've had a few conversations with folks internally, and I'm curious as to kind of how some of those things have panned out with those that are still there. Some of the management team does feel like they just got lucky to kind of be where they are, and that there wasn't a clear kind of, they had to show results for X period of time to actually get there. I remember one manager particularly was telling me the story of he hit his quota, 75% of it, I think, within the last week or two. It just happened, right? And yes, you make it happen, you create those opportunities and stuff like that, but ultimately there's no defined method. Sometimes it's just luck, right? Even if you're doing the work and you're creating the habits, slow months are slow months. I strongly believe that. And it just felt like some people just kind of got to where they are because they were lucky, and then that makes it hard to teach others to do well because you yourself just got lucky. You know what I mean? So it's tough. Two last things I wanted to touch on. The diversity push that Outreach has is great. It's far ahead of most companies, because a lot of companies, we all know, they talk about it, but there's not much being done. I mean, just at the time of recording this, look at Activision just recently. It's tough, and the Microsoft bottom, and then it's so confusing. Anyway, my incoming class, super diverse, like I said, but it's weird because a lot of the other classes, even after us, were just still that stereotypical, just a bunch of white frat boys, and we're actually differently from AT&T. Here, there's very little females too. It was just a lot of guys, and super cliquey, certain way that everybody talks, and you just kind of have to assimilate, right, if you want to do well. And ultimately, for me, it wasn't a big deal. I just kind of got along with everybody. I just have that kind of I just get along well with everybody. It's hard to explain. But for those of you that are really wanting, yes, diversity is happening. It's happening. It's a little slow, but it's getting there. Do know that the current culture of the company, and I've only been out of it for a few months, is still very, very cliquey, very frat boy oriented. Also know that these people are really nice. They're great people to work with professionally either way. So don't let any of this intimidate you. It's just I want to let you know the types of personalities that you're going to be talking to, clashing with potentially, stuff like that. But there's tons of value that I got from them. So this is by no means don't judge them. Just if you're a little different or something like that. I just want to make sure. I know some people care about this stuff, so that's why I always like to address this stuff in videos. Because it's a startup, shifts are happening constantly, right? You have people moving into different roles, management included, just becoming a management of different segments. They're bringing in new managers. And a lot of shifts happening so fast. I was super on board with that. I loved it. It affected some of my friends in the program, not as good though. I know some of my friends from the emerging segment, so that starting segment from my own class, said that they felt that they were just kind of forgotten about. And when other classes came in, and I know his particular manager actually became manager of another segment. So when that dude was just kind of left hanging, and he was he had the results, he was reaching quota, he was overperforming, he was doing all this stuff, but he was just kind of forgotten about and never got promoted or even asked to interview internally or even considered, because other people were also coming in to the company and they were thought of first because they were just more fresh in mind. So it's tough. Turnover in any sales role is kind of tough. With us, it's a little bit smaller because our team's smaller, but at the end of the day, out of my incoming class, it was just me and one other guy left out of 13 of us that came in together. So this was, obviously many months down the line. So it's not as bad as how it was at AT&T, but it's definitely a little tough to kind of deal with that, just the morale and, hearing about their experience. I feel obviously, I moved up and all this stuff, and I was treated very well, but to see how other people was treated, I just felt this stuff is kind of worth mentioning. Either way. Finally, right, that brings me to the end of the video, and that brings us to the final question. Should you apply for this job? Should you work at Outreach as an SDR, as an enterprise SDR, as a corporate SDR? I can't speak for the AE side, the closer side. Again, these are all separate roles. I can direct you to some people if you want, but here's the thing: 100% take this role if you get it. If you're trying to like get into the sales world, especially the tech startup, like just do it. This company's phenomenal, incredible benefits package, just like people, like in development. That's the number one thing for me, is just like you're learning so much here. Like you're not gonna be in a bad place at all. Promotions so fast, like commission structure is amazing. Like this one guy I knew, he had to interview 3 times with them to actually get the role. So it's not easy. If you do get accepted, definitely consider accepting the offer if you get it, because they don't hand them out that like left and right like a lot of companies do. And then very great sales experience, especially if you previously have none. Again, on the negative side, you might have to deal with some minor cultural issues, and also know that you're going to be under a lot of pressure. But if you like that, this is absolutely for you. And by now, you probably already know you want to go down the sales route. So it's just a matter of choosing the right company. I think there's no better place to start and hopefully stay at than Outreach. Anyways, y'all, that's the video. I'm still reading this sheet because ultimately being back on YouTube after 2 years means I forgot how to do conclusions. But leave some comments. Let me know what you think. Let's smash that like button and just get this video trending higher than most salespeople on a Friday, Saturday, or even Sunday night. Hey, Monday night too, if that's your thing. Please subscribe if even a fraction of my videos resonate with it, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Peace out.